So what is up people, welcome to new video, and in this video we will be deploying a React application to Elastic Beanstalk. We will talk about what is AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So technologies we will be using: React, GitHub Actions, Docker Compose, and AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So first we will build a React application using create React app. Then we will push the code to a GitHub repo. Then we will write a GitHub Actions workflow, and we will use a Docker Compose file for running the application on AWS Elastic Beanstalk, and we will deploy this complete application using a automated CICD on GitHub Actions. So let's get started. So first of all, let's talk about what is AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So as you can see on the screen, AWS Elastic Beanstalk is an easy to use service for deploying and scaling your web application. So it supports several environments like Java, .NET, PHP, Node.js, Python, and Ruby Go. Even it supports Docker. So using Docker container, you can deploy your application. And it also supports some your familiar servers like Apache, Nginx. How you can deploy your application? You just need to upload your code simply to Elastic Beanstalk, and Elastic Beanstalk automatically handles all the things like deployment, load balancing, auto scaling, or even your health monitoring of your application, right? At the same time, you can control all your AWS resources powering your application also. So there is no additional charge for Elastic Beanstalk. You only pay for the AWS resources you need to store and run your application. So for storing, it will use S3, or for running your application, it will use some server like EC2. So you just need to pay for the usage charge of your AWS resources, but there is no additional charge for Elastic Beanstalk service. So now let's start building our React application, and we will deploy the application to Elastic Beanstalk. So now we will be building our React application on our local machine, but we will run that React application inside a Docker container even on our local machine, right? So we want no dependency mismatch on our local machine while developing that React application also. So you can see, let's say this is my local machine, right? This is my local machine, and here let's say I have this directory here where I want to initialize my React application. Let's say this is a React app directory, and on my local machine I also have a Docker container. So if I want to have an environment for running my React application or initializing my React application, so I need to have an environment for Node.js, right? So one way is I can install my Node.js on just on my local machine, but the second way is we will have a separate Docker environment for running the application, right? So this is a container, and we can say this is a container from Node.js, right? We will run this container from a Node.js image. And here what we want is inside this Docker container we will have a directory for our application. Let's say this is a app directory. So when I initialize my React application inside the Docker container, because I am running a Node.js on my Docker container, so all the changes should reflect on my local machines directory, right? Because I want to save all the things. So I will map these two directories as a volume, right? As a volume. So it will be a host to container volume, right? And what I want next, I want that whenever my application will run on the Docker containers, right? So my application will run on only on Docker container, right? Because I have Node.js on the Docker container, so my application will run on, let's say, 3000 port, but I cannot see inside my container. I want to see that on browser, right? So I will map the ports also using publish or something, so that I will map the ports, let's say 3000 to 3000, so I can see the React application running on my local host. I can see on my local machine browser, right? So it will be on running on my browser, so I can see on local host 3000 port, right? So this is the way I can develop my application. So let's start building our application. So let's go to our VS Code, and here you can see I have a complete empty directory. If you do ls here, it is completely empty directory. So what I need to do here, I will run a Docker command to run a container of Node.js, right? So I will add docker run. Now I want to open a shell in an interactive mode, so I will add this IT flag here. And now what I want to map the volumes from current working directory to a Docker directory, let's say /app. Okay, and inside app directory my all application will go. And now I want to publish it on a port. I want to map the ports, let's say 3000 to 3000, and my image name is Node.js 14 version, and I want to open a sh shell inside my Docker container, and I hit enter. You can see I'm inside the Docker container here. If I do ls, you can see a app directory is created, but till now my current directory is completely empty, right? So I will go inside the app directory inside my Docker container. Remember, this is a Docker container running on the command line. This is not my local machine, but this is my local machine. So I am inside this app directory, and here if I create any file, let's say app.js, so you can see my that app or my file will be appear here, right? So it means these two directories are mapped as volume. So let me delete it. We will initialize a brand new React application. So how we can do that? We will run npx create react app. I will add a dot here because I want to initialize my application inside the current working directory, and hit enter. So it will take some time. It will install all the dependencies like React, React DOM or React scripts, and it will set up all the things, and it will give me a brand new React application. So as you can see here, it has created a package.json file, and that appeared here on my local machine also, right? So let's wait for it. It's installing all the dependencies inside the Docker, but all the things will appear here also, right? So you can see our application is completely initialized. Now we can just run this npm start command, and we can see our application running on localhost 3000 port. So let me run the npm start command. This is inside the Docker container, right? So it's starting. Okay, so it is saying you can see your application on localhost 3000 port. Let's go to our VS Code and our browser and type localhost 3000 port. 3000. You can see our React application is running successfully. So this is a way how we can develop our application inside a Docker container also. So we have completely done with our basic React application build. So now what we need to do is we will create a Docker file and a Docker compose file so that we can run our application on production, right? So let me exit from this container because our application completely initialized. Now let me create a new file here. We will create a Docker file here. This is a Docker file for production, right? So on which Node.js environment we created our image, our development container, Node.js, we used Node.js 14 image. So I'm saying from node 14, and I will set a working directory, let's say app. Okay, and now what I need to do is I will copy our package.json file, okay, to app directory, right? Or I can say to the current working directory, so that will be working directory itself by default. And now we will run npm install, so we can install all our dependencies inside the Docker container, right? And now we will copy all the files because we have installed all our dependencies now. So I will copy all the files. Now I will run npm run build. So what this build command will do, it will build our application as a static folder. So it will create a static folder, static files folder, and that static folder we can serve using a web server. So we will use Nginx for that, right? So now I will take a new image from Nginx. So this part of my Docker file is just for building our React application, and now I will use Nginx. So let me say from Nginx. So we will take Nginx as a base image now, and we will expose a port. We will expose a 80 port. So Nginx will serve our static files on 80 port. And now I will copy what I will copy. I only need to copy the build folder. So React will generate a build folder for our static files so that we can serve using Nginx. So I will copy the build folder only, and from where? From builder, right? So let's say builder, and here let me specify a builder here. Let's say this is a builder step here, and I'm copying this file, this build folder, from this builder container, right? and from builder I will copy this to app. What I will need to copy? App build. And now where I need to copy this? User share nginx HTML. So this is a default folder by nginx where we can copy our build files. So our all static files like our index.html file and other files that is generated by React. So we will be copying all the things inside this HTML folder. And now our nginx will be serving this build folder on 80 port. So this is our Docker file for production, for running on production on Elastic Beanstalk. And now we will write a Docker Compose file so that Docker Compose can run these images as a container on our main server or on our Elastic Beanstalk server, right? So let's create a Docker Compose .yaml file here, and here first specify a version. So we will use version 3 and specify services. So services, first service will be web. There will be only one service, and here we will build from where. Let's add context will be dot current working directory, and Docker file will be specify Docker file because our Docker file name is Docker file, right? And now we will specify ports because we want to expose our ports and map them. So what will be ports? 80 to 80, and on our container also port is running on 80, right? We have exposed 80 port in nginx container, right? So this is all in our Docker Compose file. So now we have our Docker Compose file and Docker file ready for the production. So first of all, let's test it on our local machine that it is working fine or not. So it is deploying our React application or not, right? So what we will do, we will run a Docker Compose command because we have our Docker Compose.yaml file in the current directory. So we will run Docker Compose up. We will add a build flag here because we also want to build our Docker image using a Docker file in our Docker Compose file, right? So we have already defined here. So how to build using current Docker file, it will build the image and then it will run our container, right? So I'm specifying Docker Compose up and I'm adding a build flag here. So let's hit enter and you can see it is building an image. So it is running all the steps and it is started the our server, right? Our nginx server. So now let's see on our local host that it is working or not. Okay, so let's go to local host and you can see on our local host 80 port our application is running, right, using Docker Compose. So let's quit it. So let's close it now. And now what you can do is, what is our next step? We need to configure our Beanstalk, right? So if you go to Elastic Beanstalk console, here you can see there's a button like create application. So we just need to click on that and you add application name, let's say Docker React, and platform you can choose Docker. We only need to choose Docker because we will run our application using Docker, right? So now here it is saying application code which you want to run. So we will be choosing sample application. It is basically AWS provided sample application which we can use to deploy a very sample application. We can see how it is working on Elastic Beanstalk or not. First we will create a sample application, then we can modify that version of this application using our custom code, right? So let's create this application. So here it is creating the environment and the application, so it will take some time, so let's wait for it. So our sample application is deployed successfully and it's saying it is completely okay. So here is a URL, you can access your application. If I click on it, so you can see it as just a sample application by AWS for running on Elastic Beanstalk, right? So here we have our sample application. Now what is the next step? We want to deploy our custom application which we have, right? So let's go to our VS Code, and how we will be deploying this? We will be deploying this using a CICD. We will be using GitHub Actions CICD workflow for deploying it. So let's create a .github folder, .github/workflows, and here you can add a deploy Elastic Beanstalk, or you can say deploy aws.yaml, right? So now here we can name it, let's say deploy react to AWS, let's say, right? And now add your triggers which you want, let's say on push, and specify some branch filters right here. So branches we have a particular branch, that's Docker Compose, CICD, AWS Elastic Beanstalk, right? And I'm adding it here. So now I need to specify my jobs, right? So our job will be deploy, and here what I will be using to deploy it to GitHub Actions, I will be using this actions. Sorry, I will be deploying it to Elastic Beanstalk. So I will be using this action. This is already built action by someone, and we can use it to deploy our application to Elastic Beanstalk. So it's saying like first you need to zip your code, and then what you need a AWS access key and you need a AWS secret key, right? So you can add these two both inside your GitHub secrets, right? So how you can get that? You just need to go to your AWS IAM, and you just need to create your access key and your secret key, right? And you can add those to your GitHub repo secrets, right? After that you need to specify your application name and environment name. Then version label. So version label, it is a custom version label, hard coded, but we will use our commit ID as a version label. So region, we can specify our region, and deployment package, we will specify deploy.zip that we zipped here from our current directory, right? So what we need to do, we just need to copy this and paste it in our VS Code here in this, right? So there's some indentation problems, so let me add steps here, and let me quickly correct it, and let's add here runs on Ubuntu latest. Okay, then it is completely fine, and here we have all the steps. And first it will check out our repo, it will basically clone the repo, our current repo, right? Then here it will zip our complete code, and it will ignore .git folder, and it will deploy to Elastic Beanstalk here. So you can see I have added access key and secret key. So now we need to change something here, application name. So if I go to my AWS console, here you can see what is my application name. So my application name is Docker React, right? And just copy it, paste it here, and environment name, let's go to our AWS console, and you can see which environment is there. So this is the environment, Docker React env1. Okay, just paste it here, right? And here as a version label, we will be using GitHub commit ID, right? So we will use github.sha, and here deploy.zip, and our region is US East 1. So just copy it and paste it. Now here the secret part, you need to add your secrets, the name of your secrets which you have specified inside your GitHub repo, right? So let me add my secrets here. So these are my secrets. This is AWS access key ID. Let me copy it, and key ID, I think it's the same, and let me paste it here. And if I copy my secret access key, it is the same also, right? So I'm pasting here just for there will be no mismatch. Okay, and also just add here one more input, that is existing bucket name, so where our code is stored, right? So if you go to your AWS console, inside your go to S3 buckets, right? So whenever you deploy a new application, so it creates a bucket and it stores the application code in that, right? So here you can see there is already a bucket, and just copy this name and just paste it here, right? So now what I will do, I just push this to my GitHub repo, and let's commit this all. Let's say deploy to AWS EB, and just commit it and sync all the changes. And now if I go to my repo and go to actions, you will see a new action is triggered here, deploy. And okay, it's starting the job. So here you can see it is checking out the source code. Now it is deploying to Elastic Beanstalk, right? It will take some time, so let's wait for it. So our application is successfully deployed. Here our workflow is successfully executed. So let's go to our AWS instance, AWS console, and here if you click on this URL, you will see your React application which we have developed. It's deployed, right? So what you can do now, you can deploy your custom any React application. So it is basic React application. You can deploy a to-do list. I have a video already how to build a to-do list app in React, so you can try that. So you can build your own custom projects, right? So and you can add it to your portfolio and your resume. So thanks for tuning into my channel. I hope you found the content valuable. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with our latest videos. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next video.